Like everything, I think this is very nuanced. I think it's more of an evolution versus a revolution, and that is because as long as I've regulated drugs in the oncology space and I housed rare diseases, rare oncologic diseases, we've always used one pivotal trial. And we were always kind of a deviation from the norm. And there's very strong biologic and scientific rationale for that. And the rationale is that we were treating life-threatening diseases as the trials and patients were dying. And so the idea that you could walk into a randomized, typically, but a registrational design pivotal trial and use that one well adequate and well-controlled trial, which is the technical language, that demonstrates safety and efficacy to approve this drug for patients with some risk on the back end, right? Fully characterizing safety or perhaps long-term outcomes for life-threatening or rare diseases has always been acceptable. When you port that logic into non-imminently life-threatening diseases, because diabetes, multiple sclerosis, cardiovascular disease, these are ultimately diseases that can take one's life, but they're more chronic comorbidities. And so understanding that people would need to be on these therapies likely for much longer, think about it, you're on a statin almost for life. You're on a diabetes medication. These are chronic conditions. And so and treating much larger swaths of the population. So in doing that, the fundamental question is, can you answer all the scientific questions in one pivotal trial? And classically, the answer to that from a regulatory standpoint has been no. And therefore, we need to do two adequate and well-controlled trials to account for the statistical variation and the power and kind of the alpha allocation and p-value, and also just how accounting for the large variability in the populations that you'll ultimately treat. Do I think that there are opportunities to streamline drug development and push some of that risk into the post-marketing setting, particularly where the therapies are transformational? And an example of this for me would be CAR Ts in lupus. If we're seeing transformational responses and not an imminently life-threatening disease, but a disease with great comorbidity that can, lead to long-term organ damage, would we need two adequate and well-controlled trials depending on the magnitude of the initial trial's results? I would argue in a case like that, given the modality, given the nature of the disease, and what we're hoping will continue, which are these really transformative outcomes, that's an example, or I would say I'm okay with one pivotal trial, provided it's well designed, well controlled, and we have good measures to get additional data post-market.